Hello, hello. Welcome back to Tech Ascent, the show where we dive into the trends, strategies, and success stories that are reshaping the tech landscape as we know it today. I'm your host, Oliver Clingain. I'm also the founder of Ascenxion, the premier business development partner within tech. Today, we've got a great guest join us, joined by Jonni Lundy, the co-founder and chief operating officer of Resend. Jonni, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Oliver. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about your background and what you guys do over at Resend?
Yeah. I think I'm crossing just about 10 years in ops. I started as even a front end intern and kind of moved around the whole org. I didn't officially have any ops title, but I was operating that way. Like I actually was, helping the organization and different teams be more efficient, think about costs and how we're working together and all sorts of different facets. And then a couple years ago, my old boss Zeno that we worked together in the past said he had this exciting nugget of an idea for a product, and we wanted to jump into it together. So at the beginning of 2023, we started Resend, went through YC for a couple months, and we're trying to take one of the oldest technologies, which is email, in terms of the internet, and um, put a fresh perspective to it. Think about what developers need today, and be kind of the next generational email company.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And at a high level, can you just break down how developers and email kind of how that correlates and kind of what that turned out to
Yes.
be?
Yes. So everyone's going to come into email with kind of a different vantage point, right? You might come in as a marketer and you're thinking about drip campaigns and, marketing blasts. You might come in as a consumer where you're like, hey, I open up my Gmail, my Outlook, and I talk to people or I get emails. Our focus is originated in kind of the transactional space, which is you can think of it as like product emails. So the password reset, the billing reminders, the any kind of like um, programmatic emails that an app or a website would send to their users. That's our bread and butter. We've been expanding out to more use cases, so now we do that kind of like marketing blast use case as well. We call broadcast. Um, but our main kind of user is like a technical user, and I think we'll get into this too. That definition of like what a developer is changing a little bit,
Mhm.
but for the most part developers use us to basically integrate email into their application.
Yeah, gotcha. Very cool. And I know you mentioned your co-founder had the nugget of the idea, but when you came on board, what kind of direction was the company moving? How early did you get in? And kind of where are you guys heading now, I suppose is the next question.
Yeah, so there's three of us on the founding team. So there's Zeno, which is the CEO, Boo is the CTO. So they were working on kind of the product part of Resend in 2022. Um, and they were figuring out like how would we start to implement that? What would be the kind of initial concept? And then I joined in at the same time that we were, getting accepted into YC, and we wanted to turn this product idea into an actual business, start bringing on customers. And so that's where kind of like the operational side actually had some mileage to put under our belt. So um, yeah, the second part was where are we headed? Is that right?
I suppose, and we maybe we could save that question. We can put that one in our back pocket. But think that's
Okay.
a good place to start. You dropped a
Yeah.
nugget there about kind of the operations essentially had to kind of catch up to the product, so to say, and that's something we
Yeah.
see a lot in the tech space. Is no matter what size company, operations is just always one of the hardest things to navigate. Find a good COO. It's like finding a needle in the haystack, so they say. And so,
Yeah.
what kind of challenges were you facing early days, and what lessons would you say you learned from that? And what things did you put in place?
Yeah. So there's at least in my experience, it's quite rare to think of bringing on a COO at the as like the uh, that next person after you're thinking about the product, right? A lot of
Mhm.
times it's bringing on more engineers, maybe a support person to handle, if you're bringing on users. Um, and we actually got feedback not to bring me on. I remember talking to Zeno. Is like we're like, hey, let's do this. This is great. I'd love to join. He wanted me to join, and then as we were joining YC and talking to folks there, they're like, no, don't spend your time like bringing on an operator. Bring on another engineer. So it was a little bit counterintuitive at the time. Um, my main focus from like those in those early months was basically being what I affectionately like to call like the trash can of the team, where like all of those loose ends, the miscellaneous work that comes up, I could take on, and that left Boo and Zano to be able to focus like fully on the product. So any kind of initiatives around like, oh, we got to set up like some sort of shared inbox for users to reach out to us to get help. Like, okay, let's think through what do we need there. Um, we got to like incorporate the company and start thinking about like how do we have like a bank account and like those logistics. Um, Even like we had our first offsite a couple months in where like the three of us got together and started talking about what we want the company to be. So helping to facilitate that and bringing up these kind of conversations. Um, I'm obviously biased, but I think that we took ourselves more seriously as a company because I was there. At least I would like to think that way. Um, I think it's a lot easier to just focus on product and kind of let like the company formation follow later. And so because I was there and that's kind of like my bread and butter, I was thinking about that from day one. So that's kind of evolved to taking on initiatives in the company that are brand new. So that one of the first ones was support. So I did all the support for almost a year. And then as we need to think about hiring and scaling that team. That's what I've done, over the last couple of years. Email has a lot of compliance and trust and safety concerns. So I was building out like a rule engine and all this anti-abuse stuff. And then we had to think about hiring for that and like scaling a team there. So this kind of like um, taking a problem and like becoming the domain expert on the team on something that's completely like frontier, like no one on the team has experience, and then thinking about how we scale that on a team level. That was kind of like the cycles that I would do. So taking on something brand new, really understanding what the problem is, how we want to solve it, and then thinking about who do we bring in to help us carry that forward. Um, and that was kind of like every 6 months there's like a new one of those. How do we think through that? How do we scale things up?
Yeah, nice. Came in and gave some versatility to the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from a background in sports, so we always call that the glue guy, essentially, just somebody that can
Yeah.
tie it all together. You don't need to be maybe the star developer, the star product guy, but you need somebody to tie the full team together. It sounds like you came in and did just that.
Yeah, many hats, many hats.
Hmm. For sure. And you also touched on it there, Johnny, is every 6 months or so you'd have to have a new problem, you have to bring somebody in. Something we also see, something we also hear is there's a challenge with delegation, especially being in a startup, especially a funded
Yeah,
startup. Some people, there's a lot of pressure, money wise, investor wise, just a lot going on. How do you
yeah,
decide when it's time to do that? And also, back on that question, what do you look for when you're bringing in somebody new to a growing company?
yeah. It's a good question. Um, we try to differentiate what things are like core functionality that we provide to users, and that's not only product, that can be like services as well. So our support and success team, I think, is a core component. Things like documentation are a core component, um, and treat those with an extra level of care than other things that can maybe be a little bit more like last minute, off the cuff, that kind of thing. So thinking, separating there so helps us to focus is one thing, and then from where that kind of impacts delegation, usually one of us founders are deeply involved in all of those. So it's not maybe all of us involved in them, but like at least one of us is very clearly owning any facet of the business that is going to be that we deem as like critical to how our customers experience us or how our employees experience us. And we basically stay involved until we're completely confident that someone else can do it. Now, in order to become confident, we need to hire really good people. And really good doesn't mean like they have the best resume or they've worked at the best companies. We do a lot of scrutiny in our interviewing process about culture fit. Like, there's a lot of things we can teach people. And there's a lot of things we can't teach people, and trying to make sure they have the things that we can't teach them, and then understand if we have the capacity to teach them the things that they may not have already, um,
And what do you
is
think
like
is
a
an
really,
example of something you
yeah,
can't
yeah,
teach?
yeah. So one thing we can't teach is humility, and we need to know in the interview process if they have a big ego or a small ego. Um, I've seen like that alone is one of the fastest ways to destroy a team is like get a bunch of super talented people that have huge egos. Um, Another one is uh, having like a default to action. I think you can get someone super smart, but if they don't automatically see how a thought can translate into like actual action, you're going to be working so hard to get them to that action constantly. And it's going to, no matter how like good of their ideas are, you're going to be constantly like nudging them into action. And you want people to just be going for it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, the other one is like taste and craft. That one is maybe a little bit murky. Like it can be taught to a degree, and I think we all are trying to improve our taste and get better at our craft. But there's a certain like essence that needs to be there. There's some people that just simply don't care, and there's plenty of room in the world for both people, both types of people. But for us, we want every person to be low ego, defaulting to action, and have at least the essence of that kind of taste and craft, and have a desire for more. So those are things we can't teach people. What we can teach people is like um, how to write better, for example. Like, oh, let's improve like our tone of voice, or how do we build RFCs or things like that. Like we can mold those kind of things.
Yeah, nice. And makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. I think that's a great way to look at it because, like I said, come from a background in sports, ego is most typically it's the enemy, especially in a growing culture. Something where
Yeah.
things are moving around a lot. You can't have somebody that's stuck in their ways or likes to kind of overly share their opinion when it's not to the benefit of the team. So fully
Yeah.
on board with that. And Johnny, we've talked a lot about kind of internal side of the business, what you do in operations. Looking more externally, obviously the basis of Resend revolves around email. What trends, challenges, or opportunities are you seeing in the email space right now?
Yeah. Um, One is not happening in email, but it's affecting email. So what one of the big trends we're seeing is that the definition of a developer is changing. So pre AI, like I'm not a developer. I know enough to be like dangerous in a code base, but like that's it. And I if I had to um, like code my own form on a website, I couldn't do it. Now fast forward, 2025, after the last 2 years of massive developments in AI, you have these uh, like vibe coding tools like Replit and Lovable and V0 that are turning the average person like me who can't code to like I can spin up a whole app now. with functionality and users and not just like a static landing page, but actually JavaScript and backend and APIs and all this stuff. And once you start to go like allow non-technical users to then build any sort of backend or authentication and anything like that, then email is baked into that. And so we see this large amount of users coming from these like AI app building tools that don't know what a database is, don't know what email is, don't know what JavaScript, like they don't know what how any of this works. They just need email because they built an app. And that is an interesting challenge in terms of support. Support gets kind of wild when someone like doesn't understand these like any of these core concepts. They're also coming from like these third parties, so we need to make sure the integrations are really good. Um, so that's been one wave that has brought a whole new set of users, like SEO. I mean, I think everyone's experiencing this. You have things like SEO that are like getting flipped on their head. Now we're looking at how much traffic are we getting from ChatGPT and Claude rather than what's our ranking on Google. Um, and we hear people all the time say like, oh, I asked ChatGPT what the best email provider is and it said Resend, so here I am, you know? Um, so that's one of the kind of like things that's like really transitioning the market. And the next layer of that, when you think about AI specifically, is agents. So very soon, and it's already happening, where it no longer is like you and I that are building the infrastructure, integrating email, setting things up. It'll soon be these kind of AI workers as agents that will start to like be plugging all the wires in. And so then from an app perspective, from an API perspective, we actually have to be ready for non-humans to do those steps. And so um, the way integrations happen are going to be rethought. And so basically, we're taking advantage of the fact that we're the newer kid on the block to then be like native to all of these things. Whereas the incumbents that have been around for 15 years, they have to try to overhaul their behemoth of a ecosystem to try to adapt to it. And so we can be way more agile and friendly to all these new folks coming into the space.
Mhm. Yeah, I like it. I like it. And that's definitely a trend that's in line with what I've seen, especially on that AI search front. SEOs all
Yeah,
over the place. I think a lot of, depending on what sort of business, obviously, if you have a local business, a lot of your customers, they're still Googling stuff, they're still using Safari, things like that. But I think if you're in the tech space, a lot of tech people, their best friend has become the ChatGPT, the Claude. So I think, yeah, optimizing your site, optimizing your essentially AI SEO, that's the next big trend, especially kind of in the marketing space where we operate.
totally. Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, and Johnny, I think this is a good transition point. We put in our back pocket earlier, but you mentioned some of the versatility with Resend being a newer player in the space. What's kind of the mission right now? What's the goals? What's the mission? What's on the horizon for you? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the goals is to be the end all solution for email for developers. So right now we cover a lot of the use case. There's still some missing features like inbound, like email sequences that would kind of break through those final horizons in terms of like the full email suite. So that's one piece. We have this much more ambitious goal to be the um, full communication platform. And this is much more hazy and gray, and we're not sure how we're going to completely approach that because we see the trend of companies that try to cover such a wide, like multi-channel, multi-product approach, and they end up watering down maybe the core thing that people came for to begin with. And so we don't want to jeopardize the existing email product that we have just to go after SMS or
Mhm.
WhatsApp or that kind of thing. Um, but we do see people saying like, "Great, I love Resend for email. but now I have to go to some other provider for SMS or for push notification or for those kind of things. So we would love to have, kind of that full like multi-channel suite. Um, and then we'd also love to expand in terms of the persona. So right now we're very focused on developers. Again, that persona is shifting a bit as people can do more technical things, even if they're not personally technical. So I think we'll just naturally start leaning towards the more non-technical audience, and then that'll just bring new challenges as well in terms of like what does a product look like when it's spanning these different kind of personas, and how do we still focus on that core persona and then also make it welcoming to others. So those are like the big challenges. If we can pull it off, then I think it can be like just a phenomenal journey, but it's not easy challenges to try to cover.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely some big challenges, but you guys sound like you've laid a great foundation to make it happen. And I'm actually reading a book. It's called Blitz Scaling right now. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if you read it before, but I think
Mm-mm.
that's one I'd recommend. It's all about all these stories about all these big tech companies broke into the space like Uber, Amazon, Meta, just how everybody kind of rapid growth while maintaining that core product without over
Mm.
expanding, over diluting, things like that. So blitz scaling, I would
Awesome.
recommend. I'm only about halfway through, so I don't know what happens in the end, but it's a good stop. It's a good spot to start. So
Nice. Thanks for the rec.
yeah, of course. And Johnny, I got one last question for you before we wrap up, and it's gonna lean on your operations background. Typically ask this to a lot of people across sales, marketing, but I think you'll have a unique perspective with the operations. If you could highlight one area of that most tech businesses are overlooking in operations that you think people could increase efficiencies, maybe it's something you've done or it's something you really focus on in your day to day, well, what do you think that one area would be, and what piece of advice would you give on how to do it?
I think if you're thinking about efficiency,
It can be
it's hard to
anything
pick.
operations related. I don't, I
Yeah,
don't, I don't want to narrow you down to efficiency. It can be anything ops related. What's
yeah.
one thing?
Maybe I'll go two directions. So thinking of like efficiency, especially for customer facing ops, um, I think it's super easy to overlook docs and just content in general. There's a lot of different versions of it, blog posts, knowledge base, docs, whatever you do. Um, we basically have this philosophy of like try catch. So when someone's having a problem, when someone has a question, we want them to have a bunch of self-service options as the try, and then the catch is talk to support. And we have fantastic support. I just posted uh, recently about like how some of the support trends that we're seeing internally, and have a fantastic team that people love reaching out to. But at the same time, those people are only available certain times a day. They only respond, after 30 minutes or a couple hours, depending on the ticket type. So we want you to be able to go fix the problem yourself, and if you want to. And so creating all those resources, and then that feeds into kind of what's happening with AI, because all that content then becomes the knowledge base for a really good AI implementation. And that can be, obviously, the implementation can be varying depending on your philosophy of how you want your customers to be interacting with it. But I don't really see an option where you double down on really good documentation and that doesn't like reap a bunch of benefits later on.
Mhm.
However, you kind of use it, or it just becomes an amazing asset. Um, and I think is essential for scale. Otherwise, you're just going to be chasing headcount, to customers. I think the second thing in terms of maybe more of a growth side of things is, and this isn't related to efficiency, but just something that we've been adopting in the last kind of 6 to 12 months, is thinking about initiative as experiments. So It's so easy to slow down and want something to be perfect before we roll it out. And also to roll something out and not know if it was successful or not. And so thinking of things through the lens of the scientific method, like, okay, I have a hypothesis. How am I going to verify if this is correct or not? What's my sample size? That gives a really nice paradigm for its effectiveness. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're investing heavily in right now is our CRM. So something that we haven't had until now. We're just now building out like a actual CRM. We've had little kind of spreadsheet versions of it before, and we're now able to run after all these different flows and say, okay, what about this specific use case? What if we did some sort of nurture at this point in the journey? Or what if we identified that this data point indicates churn, and then we can then have some sort of nurturing right here. So all of those are just like experiments. We don't know if they're going to be successful, um, but we can set up some sort of criteria for us to be able to go after it and then say, cool, that one, we ran that for 2 months, didn't see any fruit from it. So then we'll move on to something else. Um, Rather than just trying to go out into the market and see like, oh, this company's doing this. We're gonna like only do that. And we just wasted a lot of time in growth specifically in the paralysis of like not doing anything until we were completely confident. And now we're trying to break through that in the form of little experiments and then like drop the ones that aren't working and then double down on the ones that are.
Yeah, nice. I think that's the name of the game in the current state of tech to break through any sort of noise is you've got to test a lot and then you've got to optimize a
Yep,
lot. I like the term just fail fast. Then you
that's
figure it
right.
out from there. And
Exactly.
then on your first point, yeah, I think documentation of everything internally, externally, I think there's only pros that can come from that. Obviously, the con might be it's a little time consuming, but the pros far outweigh the cons. So
Yep.
I
It's much
love
more
it.
time consuming to rewrite it multiple times though, I will say. One and
Yeah,
done, and then you can move on.
I like that. I like that. And Johnny, that is all I've got for you today. I appreciate you coming on, giving a little operations master class at the end, sharing a little bit about what you're seeing in the market, what you guys are doing over at Resend. But I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Oliver. It was a great time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And for everybody listening, I'll be sure to tag Johnny's LinkedIn down in the description. I'll tag Resend's website down in the description. But Johnny, on that front, is there anywhere else people can go look for you on, or is those the main two?
That's the main two. Yeah, come say hi.
Perfect. I'll tag it all down in the description. And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time. And Johnny, thank you for taking the time as well.
Appreciate it.